You're probably asking yourself, Jordan, what's that big white thing behind you? Projector screen. But why would I have a projector screen behind me, you might be asking? Although I don't know you could be asking any number of questions. But to answer your not asked question, I've looked at a few projectors up to this point, and actually every time that I've looked at one, well, let's just say that I've not done it entirely fairly. I've not projected it onto a flat white surface, specifically onto a projection screen, which means you're not going to get the best possible image. So I picked this guy up. It was actually open box from Best Buy, and I think it was $60 with a tripod stand for it. And it's not the biggest projector screen that you can get, but for $60, it looks all right. But what are we going to use this for? Let's look at a projector. This is the Aodin Smart Projector. You got a little bit of info here on the back of the box. It says it has a DC input of 5 volts, RAM plus memory is 1 gig of RAM, 32 gigs of memory. And here's some of the things that are built into it: YouTube and Facebook and Skype, built-in Wi-Fi and Netflix and Kodi. I know a lot of you guys seem to be really interested in Kodi. Anyway, without any further ado, let me go ahead and open the box. Although I will admit, just full disclosure here, I've already opened the box and looked around inside of it because it actually looked like it had already been opened. I talked to the company and they said that that's pretty standard fare for the way they do business. They open it up, they test it, they make sure everything's okay with it before they ship it out. In the first time I looked at it, everything looks just fine. It's just the packaging looks a little rough. So you start out with the user manual, gives you info on all the stuff that you can do with this projector. You have the projector itself, which as you can see is very tiny, but we'll put that off to the side for a moment. Got a couple little boxes here, one with a power supply and about a 1 meter cable. The power supply does output 5 volts at 3 amps. Very strange that it's not a micro USB plug though. The other little box has a mini tripod and a remote. A remote that sounds kind of fishy. And that would be why. There's a little USB dongle inside of here. I really don't know. This is just a little USB dongle that presumably goes with the remote because the remote had it inside of it. By the way, the remote's going to take 2 AAA batteries, not included. But this has no markings on it, so I have no idea what that's actually for. And finally, inside of the package is the Aodin Projector. And just to give you a sense of scale, a sense of size here, this is the iPhone 7 in a Mophie case right next to the Aodin Projector. Lay it on top of it, you can see it's just barely wider, and the Mophie case does add a bit of thickness to the phone, but this projector is just about the same thickness. So realistically, wherever you can put your phone, you can probably put this projector, making it a truly portable projector. Taking a little bit of a closer look at it, here on top you've got your arrow buttons, an OK button, back, mode, and power buttons. On the left-hand side, there's a focus dial. There's a switch here to go from presumably just projection to the micro SD card slot, the TF slot, but we'll see what that does in a minute, I'm sure. On the other side, there are 2 full-size USB ports, the DC power input, as well as headphone output, and full-size HDMI. On the bottom, there's fan grills, and there's a tripod mount right here. Then on the front, there's another fan grill, as well as, of course, the lens itself, the main projection element. And now that I'm starting to look at this in more light here, you're probably not going to be able to see it on camera, but this is definitely, it's got some scratching and scuffing to it. This looks like I got a used unit, but I'm going to hold judgment off. So if we go ahead and just hold the power button here, it should turn on. I did forget to mention the LED light, the status LED, shows up here in the back. Presumably some of these vent hole covers are also a speaker. It is blowing air out the front now though, and as you can see, it's projecting. But what is it projecting? It says Aodin Smart Home. And looking in the camera, you can't really see what it's projecting on the screen very well. You can see that it's there when I move it around. Can make a little bit of a change to the brightness there inside of the menus, because it actually has, I forgot to mention this earlier, this is a projector. It does HDMI and it has a micro SD card slot and everything. It's also got Android built into it. So this is actually an interface on top of Android that you're seeing right now. And I just flipped the switch on the side and it actually stopped projecting. So I guess that switch does actually turn it on and off without actually turning the whole thing off. No, I flipped the switch back and it's off. And now that I've held the power button again, it's having to come back up from the beginning. So that switch on the side, I'm gonna have to look it up in the user guide. By the way, this little mini tripod, not gonna be the best thing in the world, but it is made out of metal for the most part. And it does have these little telescoping legs as well as a ball head, so you can kind of adjust the way that it's going to sit. It's now sitting on the table. Now the one thing I've noticed the few times that I've turned this on is it does start out very bright and then suddenly go very dim. As you can see, you can't. If I turn off some of my lighting there, you can see it's a little bit brighter now, a little easier to see. And if I go back into the menu there and actually set the brightness up again, it does get significantly brighter. For whatever reason, it's at the maximum brightness in Android, and then I have to actually go back and set it down and then back up, and it gets brighter. You can see it gets brighter. And actually, now that I've turned off all my filming type lights, significantly easier to see, even though it is still decently bright in this room. The other thing that makes this thing pretty cool, in my opinion, a lot of the projectors that I've seen that are super small like this are like 800 by 480, but they say they might support up to 1080p. This one is supposed to be natively 1080p, across the board. Looking at the picture, it's kind of hard to tell that, and of course what you're going to be seeing on the camera, going to be kind of hard to tell that. But just using the buttons on the actual projector, I'm able to navigate through the whole UI. So I can go over to Google Play and hit OK, and it should load it up. Although it's asking for account information now, I can go down to social apps here and click on it, and you get a list of social apps that you can use. So it does come with Facebook, RSS feeds, Twitter, and Skype, of course, and you can add other stuff to that. You can see the full list of apps here from the main screen again. There you go, pause it and take a look at some of those if you like. It does have things built into it like Hulu and Netflix and YouTube. And because it does have Google Play on it, you can actually update those after the fact as well. There's even a wireless update option right over here that you can see. But if I'm being honest here, the main reason to get excited about a projector like this is not necessarily Android built into it. It's cool to have that, but it's Android 4.4, so a lot of the stuff isn't going to be optimized hugely well. The big thing for me is having this really small form factor and being able to plug other stuff into it. So if I plug in HDMI like I've got to my laptop, and then go down to HDMI and hit OK, it's going to come back up. You can see it's a blue screen for a second there. My laptop flashes, and now we're seeing my laptop screen. And interestingly enough, I set it to be scale for display and I set it to 1080p. If I go back to default, you can see all the UI elements got significantly larger, which makes me think that this is probably 1280 by 720 instead of 1080p native, but it does support 1080p. And I'll admit, it's a little difficult to read the text on here at the default resolution, so going to 1080p on it gets very, very difficult. But then at the same time, you can see I went over to YouTube, I pulled up a video, hit play, and it's playing back. The speaker built into this, it's not particularly good, but it does have a 3.5mm output, so it can always be used with a speaker or something. And then I just hit the back button and it goes back into Android. I will say when it was plugged into HDMI, it was not quite as bright as it is in the Android side. And there's no way for me to control the brightness or anything as far as I can see doing that. But you know, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this on day one. Suffice to say, I think this is a really interesting product. If for no other reason than its form factor, it's about the size of a smartphone, a large smartphone, and the fact that it does support 1080p video, even though that may not be the default native resolution for it. By the way, I did forget to mention earlier, there is the ability to change the keystone. You may have noticed that when I was changing the brightness, so you can always adjust that. There's even an auto adjust built into it for the Android side. But again, to keep from going on too long, there's an awful lot of features built into this tiny little package. The one sort of downside to it, okay, two downsides. One, it's Android 4.4, so you're going to be missing out on features of newer versions of the OS, and this, entirely honest here, might not ever get upgraded. And two is the price point. This is available for about $230 to $240 over on Amazon, and for that price, it's not all that bright, and the speaker is not very good. But like I said, it does have a lot packed into it. Micro SD card slot, 2 full-size USB slots, full-size HDMI, and speaker output. So you could turn this into a little family movie night thing if you really wanted to. And that's where I'll leave it. So if you're interested in checking it out, I'll put a link down in the video description. Thanks to Aodin for sending this out for me to take a look at. Thanks to you guys for watching. Remember to leave a thumbs up if you liked this video. Leave a thumbs down if you didn't like it. Subscribe to the channel to get notified whenever I put out a new video, and ting the little bell there so you actually get notifications instead of having to come back to the page. And I will see you again next time.